Welcome to the Bitcoin Zodiac, the podcast that explores the intersection of finance and astrology, where we use a combination of spirituality and logic to help us connect the dots in the markets as well as in life. Hosted by Corinne, Claire, and Alexandra, who come from a diverse background, bringing with them a wealth of knowledge and experience in the realms of astrology, cryptocurrency, spirituality, yoga philosophy, day trading, and of course, Bitcoin. In each episode, we explore a different aspect of the economics of the markets, from following Bitcoin to more complex topics like blockchain governance and decentralized finance. But we don't just stop there. We also examine and discuss the astrological implications of these topics, exploring the different zodiac signs, the houses, the moon phases, and how they might approach financial decision-making and investment strategies. Join us on this journey as we explore the intersection of these two worlds that are often thought to be at odds with one another, finance and astrology. Whether you're a seasoned crypto investor, a day trader, or just starting to dip your toes into the world of Bitcoin and blockchain, the Bitcoin Zodiac is a podcast for you. So sit back, relax, maybe take some notes, and come expand your consciousness with us through the world of the financial markets with an astrological lens.
Good morning, ladies.
Good evening. Good morning. How we doing?
Good evening. Doing well. Doing well.
Yeah. How has this, what have we had the last full moon?
Sagittarius full moon.
In your Sagittarius, Claire.
Yes. It's always a deep one for me, for sure. I mean, as I've said on previous podcasts, I kind of schedule out time during the full moon just to be alone and to be, very inward looking and just, let things come up. And I mean, it's my natal full moon, sorry. And so, really interesting things. I had a lot of like inner child things come up, which is interesting for me because I'm not really drawn to inner child work that much. I respect it and what have you, but it's generally not my go-to. I'm more of like a shadow work kind of person, or kind of Kundalini yoga, breath work, that kind of thing. I'm not super big on the inner child stuff, but I definitely dove into that this full moon. It was really good, just sort of honoring my inner child's experience. I think I'm not drawn to it so much because I kind of I look back on my childhood and it's generally pretty happy, you know what I mean? But it's just interesting to kind of go back and honor her experience. So yeah, that's what I've been up to.
That's really beautiful. And I love how, once again, everybody experiences these moons in such different ways. Yeah. I had a mad download and pieced so many of the pieces of the puzzle together for me that I've probably been waiting on for almost a year on specific things around my business and the direction of specific parts of my business. And I was like, yes, Sagittarius energy, fuel my fire, I don't have any key Sagittarius placements, but obviously I have a big part fire being a Leo. And I was just feeling it and downloading, and I scribbled on pieces of paper and my whiteboard and all over the place. So bit of a different experience there. Yourself, Alex, instead?
That's
so fire.
So fire. That's so Bitcoin.
That is so Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
We'll get that to work.
Figured I'd drop it now. See how it feels.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating, Corinne, because I think in terms of I always think of Sagittarius energy as this kind of warrior, with this arrow that kind of, it's very directional energy. And so it's so interesting that you were sort of channeling that energy through your business, because you have so many different facets of your business that you're so genius in, coaching people, mentoring people, teaching people. It's so interesting. So it's so cool that you were kind of using that directional energy in a really productive way. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was very great. And it was kind of funny because I always think about, I'm like, full moon is for releases, right? Whereas the new moon is for the new. And within that, though, it was interesting to be like, I was releasing so much of the past that I knew I needed to let go of to then head in this, call it new direction, right? So, yeah, lots of releases. It was really cool.
Wow. Wow. And we're heading into now coming up will be the Gemini new moon in the 11th house. So 11th house, all about central banks and people of authority. So I think
wow, how fitting.
what a coincidence. We've got so much to talk about. There's been a lot that's been happening in crypto in between our last episode. So I think Gemini, is this air sign associated with communication, intellect, versatility, and adaptability. I love me some Gemini energy. I have dated several Geminis. Both my parents are Geminis. It's my opposing sign to my son. But it's a really fun, exciting energy, but can also be a little confusing, a little hectic.
Yes. A little, a little, what do you want kind of energy around Gemini. Like pick a side.
Say one thing, do another. I mean, the beautiful quality about Gemini, and maybe Alex will relate to this because I see it very similar to Aquarius energy, but a different expression of. I think a beautiful quality about Geminis and Aquarius is that they can really hold several truths at once. This can be true, this can be true, this can be true. They have the ability to hold different ideas at once. Whereas like my Sagittarius energy is very much like, no, this is the way, this is the truth, right? This is how it is. Whereas I think, it's important in this time to be able to have that capacity to let things play out, hold different avenues and let things play out.
Yeah, when you were saying that, what I got was, well, Gemini and Aquarius are both air signs. And I think like the four winds, the north wind, south, east, west, and the winds being able to just blow in different directions. You can stand outside and feel the wind shift directions. You can, and we're the sign of air. So all the different air molecules, I mean, you can't really contain air. It just is. So yeah. A good comparison, holding multiple views, being able to see multiple truths, embody multiple truths, see different parts of the
and analyze multiple perspectives as well. And I think that's definitely coming up in the crypto space. What do you think, Corinne?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just here actually looking at the chart, and I'm just looking at the fact that so much has been dropping in altcoins and Bitcoin's just chilling.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if we're here talking kind of like about Gemini, and could you call it even kind of like a duality? And I'm just like, is this where we start to see a division start to occur more and more between Bitcoin and the alts? I don't know why, that's just like kind of like what came to me as you ladies were speaking, and I was just looking at the charts. Because everything is going through or rather, like you said, we're going to have this new moon occurring in the 11th house. Everything in regards to I can't think of the word that you just said before.
Central banks and people of authority.
There it is. Central banks and just centralization, right? And what we're seeing at the moment with the Coinbase and Binance and the SEC and Gary, and we'll dive into all of that. And I'm just like, haha, like, who are you going to sue for a Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Like, Bitcoin is that one thing that, You can't be like, oh, hey, like I'm going to sue Satoshi Nakamoto. Like, where are you going to send that email? You know what I mean? Like, and so I'm excited for Gemini energy. It's just perfect timing. And also just on Gemini, we also just had Mercury go into Gemini.
Yeah.
That's a big sigh of relief, because Mercury obviously has been playing with us for a little bit, going into retrograde and creating all this, call it chaos or challenges. And now finally, it's Gemini is, or Mercury is the ruling planet of Gemini. And so it's finally like at peace. And we can maybe finally get some clarity around communication and decisions too.
Yeah. Well, I think Gemini's influence can really sort of enhance the dissemination of financial information, market news, and economic data. So it's a period where communication channels are very active, and there's an increased, focus on analysis, research, and discussions within the financial world. And we're already seeing this. So expect there to be a lot of information to process during this time. And Gemini is really changeable in nature. So, this can maybe lead to some volatility as well. So it's going to need some adaptability. But Geminis love that ride, love that roller coaster. But it can definitely influence. I think it is, to me, this is, especially because Mercury is also in Gemini, it just enhances that. It makes that particularly influential. So it's really going to be a drive of information. And I think what's interesting that's happening with Coinbase particularly, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about Binance, because Corinne had some really interesting things that she noticed in Binance's chart a few episodes ago that we'll speak about, because it's just amazing to see how these things have played out. But I think in terms of Coinbase, it's a really interesting time. I watched an interview with Brian Armstrong, which is the Coinbase CEO, yesterday. And he's ready to take on this challenge. And I think that it's really interesting. I think Coinbase has been one of the companies that have really wanted to legitimize this industry and have really pushed for a framework with which to navigate crypto legally in the United States. And there are a lot of people that are against regulation, but we've spoken about this before. There needs to be some kind of regulation. And the way the SEC are going about it is really interesting. They don't target specific projects directly and sue them. They are going directly for the exchange, which is then limiting the ability to invest in these different projects. I thought also it's definitely interesting to mention that the list of possible securities that Gary Gensler listed, notable not mentions were Bitcoin and Ethereum. So previously, Bitcoin has been defined as a commodity. And when Gary Gensler was teaching about crypto, when he was a lecturer at MIT, he also declared ETH not a security because of its decentralization. So I think it's really interesting to see how this plays out. I think it's going to take years, which is really sad. But I think Brian Armstrong is really brave and is really ready to take on that fight, and he's going to get clarity through the courts, because they have tried with the SEC. Apparently, they've met with the SEC over 30 times in the last year, and they still have no regulatory framework with which to work around. And but the fact that this is going through the courts, it is going to take years. It is going to be a really hard battle, which they may lose. We don't know. No one knows how it will play out. But what it does is it just sets the US back. You know, like it's really sad because the US is known for its, you know, championing innovation and entrepreneurship. That's what the US is built on, you know, whereas you're seeing a shift back to the UK, back to London, back to Hong Kong, you know, Hong Kong also. I said to you guys earlier this week in our group chat that I've noticed, like while trading, that Bitcoin is making its moves in the Asia session, which is really annoying for me because it means I have to get up early. But it's making bigger moves. I know it's been perfect for me as a trader because I can trade the London session and the New York session in the evening for me. Whereas the Asia session is obviously in the, you know, starts in the morning for me. But that's when Bitcoin has been making its moves over the last month. So you're seeing a shift away from the US. And I think that's really silly, but it is what it is. What do you guys think about all that's happening in crypto?
Pluto and Capricorn.
It's so Pluto and Capricorn. We said this in the last episode. It's a power struggle between the old and the new, you know, and this is exactly what it is.
Release, reform, reconsider traditions and structure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what's so interesting is, you know, you just said the perfect words of like what I had written down for this next new moon on June 18th. Venus and Pluto going to cause some power struggles around finances is literally what the energy is all about. So took the words right out of my mouth. Like that's literally what's going on during this period. And, you know, I want to take it one step back because I found something really interesting in the astrology of, so tomorrow we have, and as we're recording this, it's the 12th of June. So tomorrow is the 13th of June. And we have the Hindman documents having to be brought public tomorrow. And so that is all the case, or a big part of the case around Ripple XRP, right? And so what this Hyman documents are all about is, I believe he's a commissioner. I think it's William Hyman. He's a commissioner of the SEC. And, you know, he had claimed, and there are documents where he claimed that Ethereum is not a security. But what is a big part of this case that they continue to say XRP is a security. And if they come out tomorrow and say that Hyman did say Ethereum is not a security, therefore Ripple Labs is being like, okay, well then tell us how Ethereum differs to XRP and how XRP is a security. And so if this happens, I think we could see some really interesting price movements in Ripple. And what I noticed looking at Ripple's astrology is that Uranus, and I'd like to bring up Uranus a few times throughout today's session. Uranus has been going through the 8th house, which is death, rebirth, restructure of XRP, the token, since about 2020, or for maybe even 2019. So right around when the case started with Ripple or XRP. And it literally 2 days ago just moved out of the 8th house.
Wow.
And now that all of this is happening and just looking at other things inside of the astrology of XRP, I'm like, yo, it's about to take off. And I think it will really take off. Like the astrology gets really good for it in April 2024. So no financial advice there, of course, but just from an astrological point of view, I was like, the timing is incredible. And I think that we're going to see some really great moves happening soon with XRP.
Wow. Interesting. So interesting.
They continue to list it as a security. And this is the biggest problem that now, you know, Cardano, Polygon, Solana, all being listed as a security. They're like, how can you define a security based on a structure or definition that was created in 1946 was when securities and the test, I can't think of the right word for it. There's a test that they do where there's like 4 outlines of what is classified as a security. And if you don't fall under those, then you're classified as a commodity. It was created in 1946. Like, we need an upgrade because a lot of these companies are coming out, like, again, Cardano, Polygon, Solana, they're like, we're digital commodities. You can't define us from this old thing. So it's chaos. Like, just laughing.
I think it comes
Nobody knows what they're doing.
No. And this is the thing that it should, it really should, they have dropped the ball on it. And I think they've purposely dropped the ball on it because they wanted to just cause ambiguity. They wanted no clarity because really people can't build companies without any certainty. People are not going to take those risks, to build companies and then to have them a couple of years later be labeled as a security and be completely wiped out. Now, we're not naive. I would say that like probably 80-90% of projects within crypto probably are securities, and that's fine. Like, I hope what comes out of these cases is a framework on how people can build these companies and launch them, as secure, except that they are securities. But the question around things like Solana, things like Cardano, etc., is around decentralization. And, Bitcoin started off centralized, right? But then it became decentralized. There was a pathway, and that's how it enabled it to become a commodity. And so there's kind of talk, will there be sort of a period after launch, like a safe harbor period, I think they call it, where it has a pathway to become decentralized and therefore is not technically a security. But there's just a redefinition that needs to happen, and it just hasn't happened. And it's sad that it's happening to be fought out in the courts because it's just a very unproductive way of doing it, to be honest. But it is what it is. And I also feel the timing of it is very interesting because chances are Gary Gensler is going to be gone if there is a new administration, or things will change. I think people have said that he's angling for Janet Yellen's position at the Treasury, which is just the career path, isn't it?
Oh boy. I don't know if you ladies saw, but he might be getting fired because he was found for insider, or rather manipulating the markets, when he tried to short $2.5 million worth of Bitcoin. But whoops, didn't he say under oath that he's never owned any Bitcoin or Ethereum? I'm like, is this man going to jail yet? Or like, literally, like I said before that we started recording, Mr. Burns, like, that's what he is. That's what he reminds me of.
Yeah, he's just following orders. Honestly, he's just following orders. But my question in all this as well is like, and I've asked this question many, many times, and no one can ever give me a legitimate answer, because you can see what is happening. Like, first, they're taking out the banks that service crypto. That's happened. Now they're taking out the exchanges that service crypto. And, yes, Bitcoin is not defined as a security. Even Ethereum is not defined as a security. But these things do still affect the inflows of money into the system. And I think that has been the goal, is it's really slowing down the adoption. At the end of the day, I still, it doesn't stop Bitcoin, because Bitcoin was designed as a P2P network. It wasn't ever designed to be bought through a centralized exchange. That wasn't part of Bitcoin's design. So it just has made it easier and has facilitated adoption, in a different way, but it's caused its own problems. And so I think, that's part of the plan. First the banks, then the exchanges, and my question is, what are they going to do to try and turn off Bitcoin? You know, can they do that? Is there something to do? And no one can ever answer me that. Like whenever I've asked the question, how does Bitcoin fail? People always have these crazy things like, oh, well, the internet will be wiped out. Nuclear war will be nuclear. And I'm like, to be very honest, like in the instance of nuclear war, I'm not going to be caring about Bitcoin. Like, to be very fair, it's not going to be my priority, you know? So there's never, but I think it's naive to think that there will not be an attack, you know, an attempt to turn off Bitcoin. So, yeah, I'm interested. Any listeners have any valid or serious serious theories about what's possible in that way? I'm all ears to hear that.
Yeah, please drop a DM.
Yeah.
Drop a DM. Yeah, I think that apart from those extreme cases of, yeah, like just no more access to internet or power, you know, I think the only other potential option would be, you know, around the answer of the question of what is money, right? And what is money? It's literally just something that people have decided to use as their means of exchange. And so the only other option could be, yeah, people choose not to use Bitcoin. But I think we're way past that point. We are way past that point. If people didn't want to use Bitcoin, then it would have already failed. So to answer your question, nothing else except for the cyber power attacks, which we won't go down that rabbit hole, but
Yeah, I know. I'm like, no, I mean things that like, you know, are in the reality of like, you know, and I do think that there will be legislation. I think there will be countries that outlaw private, you know, holding Bitcoin privately. I do think that will happen, but I think, you know, in the US, I think it's going to become a voter issue. I mean, we've already seen, you know, a presidential candidate from the side of the Democrats, a presidential candidate from the side of the Republicans, and an independent, you know, speak at the Bitcoin conference. I think these are going to be one of their issues that they run on. And I think it was Anthony Scaramucci that said 75 million people in America hold Bitcoin. I mean, that's nearly enough to win an election. So, look, I don't know where he's getting those figures from. I don't know whether those are all eligible voters, whether those are all, you know, wallets that are held by single people, or they're, you know, one person holds multiple wallets. I don't know where he's getting that information. But still, it's a substantial amount of people that hold Bitcoin within the United States. And as he said it becomes like a decentralized lobbying organization. And so I think we're going to head into some very interesting times where you know, all over the world, where this is going to become a voter issue. So it'll be fascinating to see. And I think there'll be some countries that can, you know, I think at the moment, countries have a choice where they can either go, okay, we see the existential threat of this, you know, Bitcoin really becoming adopted. I mean, the adoption curve for Bitcoin is like nothing we've ever seen before. You know, people can listen to headlines and say, oh, Bitcoin is dead, or Bitcoin is too volatile or risky or whatever. But if you look at the actual facts and the charts, the adoption curve for Bitcoin is like nothing we've ever seen before. It's steeper than the internet. So, you know, it's like, it's crazy. And so countries, I think at the moment have a choice whether they go, okay, this is something that we can't control. Are we going to back this and tax it? Or are we going to attempt to block it and run the risk of kind of being left behind? So I think that's where they're at. And I think if they try and block it, they also run the risk of creating like a shadow economy within their own country that they don't control. So I think that's the kind of balancing act for countries at the moment.
Very Pluto and Capricorn.
Very much so. Very much.
Well, they're in for a rude awakening start of 2024 when adios to Pluto and Capricorn until however many centuries, decades. But yeah, it's super, super interesting times. And just looking back really quickly from, you know, the last episode that we recorded and headed towards the full moon, I just look at like Bitcoin's price in general and I'm like, it's honestly just in consolidation. Like it's just really, it's holding up. And I know I said it before and I just continue to look at it and I'm like, you go Bitcoin. Like it's it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. And the astrology looks so good for it. I did kind of have like one red flag being Pluto going back and retrograding back into Capricorn, but we can't back test that because we've never seen it happen in Bitcoin's lifetime. Because it was already with Pluto in Capricorn. And that was the red flag that we've already kind of passed. Didn't see any significant effects yet. And then one red flag, which maybe we'll talk about going into the future, that I might be seeing. But apart from that, Bitcoin's I'm just so proud of it. I feel like a proud friend. I'm doing it.
I love that. I love that interpretation. And I do always find it fascinating because I mean, I see outside of astrology, I see some red flags on the horizon that make me uncomfortable with the markets in general. I mean, there is about to be $1 trillion worth of treasuries issued, you know, that need to be bought. And I think Janet Yellen says in the next 6 weeks, they expect to have the treasury balance back up to 700, you know, 700 billion, right? So where does that money come from? Generally, it comes from obviously other central banks, other banking institution, but it also comes from people seeing treasuries as a safer asset. So, you know, is that going to cause people to leave the stock market and run into treasuries? And what kind of news would cause that? So yeah, there's that shoe that also may drop. And obviously the continued thing of crypto. So the continued lawsuits with crypto. But Corinne, should we talk about Binance a little bit? Because when you first called that a couple of episodes ago, I just found it so fascinating. And really it's so interesting to see some of these aspects played out. So what did you see in Binance's chart?
Yeah, so what we spoke about Binance, and I believe it was on episode 3, in case any listeners want to go back and listen to that episode. It was really around eclipse season, and you know, eclipses bring about things that occurred 6 months prior to, or that occurred the prior eclipse. And so that's what kind of like got me thinking. I was like, okay, let's go look at like other exchanges, because the eclipse previous to that, we'd had the FTX saga occur. And that's where, looking at Binance's chart, we saw where the eclipse was happening. And the eclipse was happening on 29 degrees of Aries, and 29 is the critical degree already. So we were like, red flag in general. What's going to happen? And this is for in general, so not just specific to finance. And then looking at Binance's chart, the eclipse was occurring directly conjunct to Binance's Uranus. Okay, so Uranus, when it comes to financial astrology, is really important, and even more so for crypto, because Uranus is the planet of innovation, revolution, technology, and also like for us, Uranus, as it moves around in our personal charts, it really like defines distinctive chapters that are in our life and then also in society. So it's really, really important. But what Uranus does is really like the key word here of like revolution, and it can be very unpredictable. And if anything, actually, Uranus is also the planet of earthquakes. It governs earthquakes. So just from that energy, you can think like, okay, eclipse occurring directly on Uranus, that's probably going to shake some things up for whatever chart it is that we're looking at. I think we've mentioned it here in the past as well. Like, for example, Terra Luna, when it also had its DPEG and all of that in one of the past eclipses, even there, what happened? The eclipse was directly on the natal Uranus of Terraform Labs. So seeing that happen for Binance, and it happened specifically in its 7th house. And 7th house has everything to do with exchanges, valuation, methodologies, or scandals. It's like, okay, then some sort of scandal, something big is going to happen around what? Around its exchange. So yeah, Uranus is a really important planet, which again, I'm going to touch on and remind me, because there is a key date coming up for Bitcoin that something's happening to Bitcoin's Uranus, and I don't want to forget it. But just on Binance, yeah. So here we are. That happened on the eclipse, which was the first eclipse, the 20th of April. And we have to remember that eclipse season always lasts up to 6 weeks or 42 days after the eclipse. So we're only actually going to be fully out of the eclipse energy as of the 16th of June. So that's why, like, it's kind of normal that this narrative has been building since that eclipse. And remember, astrology, it doesn't always pinpoint the date specifically, but it can definitely give us a heads up as to, like, okay, things are going to start to get triggered, and especially around eclipse season. So, and here we are that I don't know if to say like poor Binance, or like, I don't know how I feel about them. But they just have, they were extracted, or they chose to remove themselves from Canada. I don't think that was really by choice. I think they had some key obligations there that Binance recently had to stop providing their services in Canada, and now being sued by the SEC. And it's interesting because I was reading, I believe off the top of my head, there's like 13 allegations that were, or charges against Binance, and they were mainly around insider trading that the CEO, CZ, apparently was doing. So there's your scandal around an exchange. And yeah.
And also commingling of funds as well. They've asked sort of some of those kind of things, which is sort of alluding to FTX. Now, I'm really hoping that these things haven't been happening with Binance, and they just have been attacked because they really are innovators. They built the biggest crypto exchange on the planet. They really were ahead of their time. And so I hope that these kind of things aren't true, and they're able to just sort of fight against those things and keep running. And they do not bow the knee to regulators that try to stifle their business. They just go, okay, we can't operate in this country. But obviously, if these kind of dodgy things have been happening, then, I think it's really a missed opportunity for CZ and his team, to be honest, because, they've kind of written history in a way, but if it turns out to be another FTX situation, I think that's actually just kind of really disappointing, but probably not surprising. Or if it's like a situation where, Coinbase also is not accused of any of these different things. I think it's really shady that they were released on the same day, all of these charges, because it kind of puts them in the same bucket, and they're actually two completely different cases. But exactly. I think Brian Armstrong has kind of gone, he could have settled this case with Coinbase like he had, with the SEC like he has previously, but he said, no, I will not delist these tokens from my exchange. We're going to fight this. So, is that a similar case with CZ that they've been trying to put stipulations on him and his business to try and operate in that country? And he said, no, we're not doing that. This is how we're operating. I don't know. That will all come out in the wash, I guess. So let's see what happens. Can he get out of this as well, which he's been able to for all of these other kind of cases, and maneuvered around the globe to not come under their under their rules, right?
Yeah, Coinbase is a whole other deal.
Really is.
I don't think Coinbase will go anywhere long term. Actually, haven't looked at the astrology. I think that's something that we should definitely look at. I don't know, ladies. My intuition is like it's just all planned out. And I feel like if Coinbase, I want to say that I'm just going to say it. I think that Coinbase is going along with this. Like, I think that there's a bigger plan behind this. Call me a conspiracy woo-woo theorist. I'm like, nah, Coinbase is in on this. I think that, yeah, that's what I think. Full stop. I'm going to leave it there.
I don't even know if it's necessarily that Coinbase is in on it. Like, I think the way that the SEC is doing things is very below the belt. You know what I mean? They're not doing their job. They should have laid out these frameworks and everything like that. But I think what Coinbase is doing is that they are forcing them to legislate. So whether there's a big, conspiracy or master plan or whatever, I don't know that. We don't know. But I think Coinbase is really kind of going, we are going to get our legislation one way or another. We're not just going to bow to you and give you money and, delist whatever you tell us to. We are going to get some clarity around this one way or another. And I think that that's kind of what's happening.
Yeah, no, it's very, very, very interesting times. Time will tell.
But they are also removing their competition. Do you know what I mean? Because Coinbase is really Coinbase and Binance are really the only exchanges that have the money to fight the SEC.
Right.
So, I don't think Binance is going to exist in the US again. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
And I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be cleared up with Binance. It's, that may be true or maybe untrue. We don't know as yet, but I don't think they're coming back to the US anytime soon, which, Coinbase is it really.
Yeah. I'm kind of waiting out on like, okay, crypto.com, you're up next. Like, is something going to happen? Yeah, right.
Crypto.com.
What's happened to them? They're just kind of like, help. When are we next? And I mean, in the US, even Robinhood, I mean, not that Robinhood was originally created as a crypto exchange, but they've just started delisting all these pairs.
Yeah, it'll be all of those. Yeah, Robinhood just delisted them as they, before because they don't have the money that Coinbase has. They can't fight the SEC. Yeah. And so they're just going to kind of delist and kind of shrink around in the background, I guess. But I just think the way that the legislation is set up and the way that they operate is just so gross. Like the SEC is like such a headline chaser as well. Is like, they went after this big headline case with Kim Kardashian, because she's Kim Kardashian and they know that it'll get press. Oh, look what we're doing to keep the, crypto space clean. And she was sued and settled on the lawsuit because she she didn't disclose how much she was paid for shilling an unregulated security. But I mean, I've never even heard of Ethereum Max. Like, who cares? Like, you know what I mean?
I
right?
definitely did. I went
Did
to,
you? I never heard
yeah,
about
I went to a Mayweather event, not because I care, just because my friends, and it was a club in Miami, and we were like, cool, whatever. And yeah, like Mayweather, Kim Kardashian, all of them were all about ETH Max. Yeah,
But I mean,
wild.
what was it? Like, what did it do? It was just some pump and dump thing, right? But the thing is
Yeah,
that the SEC only goes after after the celebrity. They didn't actually go after the people behind Ethereum Max, right?
I don't know that detail. Obviously, they definitely made made it more public about Ethereum Max, because I actually think maybe it was even that event that like I went to, or I don't know, it was quite some time ago. I think they actually made like you could purchase the tickets with the Ethereum Max.
Okay, so
And yeah, I
people
think it
buy
was something around
the ticket.
that, but I I don't care about brand new coins like that. So I don't think I even gave it two bits of attention. But yeah,
Exactly.
really
So
interesting.
things like that can go because they're not going to bother navigating legislation and setting up things properly anyway. But my point with that is that while they're busy suing Kim Kardashian and making headlines, they're also having dinner with FTX. And
Yeah.
the SEC are meant to, their whole mandate is meant to be investor protection, which is just an absolute joke. So they're busy having dinner with FTX, but they're, suing Kim Kardashian over a pointless coin that no one really is that interested in. And meanwhile, they're having dinner with FTX. And meanwhile, Celsius as well. Like, surely there are claims, okay, there's no legislation around crypto in the US, clear legislation, but surely there is legislation about how any financial instrument can be marketed. Whereas you have like the guy from Celsius who's on video making like incorrect claims about his product. You have Sam Bankman Fried who's, also making incorrect claims, but they miss those. Like it's so pathetic the way that they operate. They're not actually really doing anything. They're certainly not protecting investors. They're just chasing headlines.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big mess. It is back to what we said, literally a power struggle around finances. That's what this whole Shazamble period is about. And honestly, until brand new clear regulations and definitions are created around securities or digital securities, digital commodities, and up to date about 2023, not 1946, then maybe we'll be able to get somewhere. And, while everybody's so focused on the US, there is huge, huge crypto adoption happening in places such as Asia, Russia, around the world, that are bigger crypto holders than the US, or even in terms of wallet addresses. So, and it comes back to what you said earlier, Claire. It's just like, okay, maybe, it looks like the US is really stepping away from the title that they had of being the innovators. And they're just letting it be to other countries right now that are really stepping in, that are going to allow a lot of retail money as well to flow into crypto. And, fellow Americans, I adore you, and get decentralized to be a part of it.
Yeah, decentralized for sure, because there are really big games being played, I think. And, we can't minimize these court cases. They are a big blow for crypto. They're a huge blow to the likes of Solana, ADA, all of those things. And yeah, it is a big blow because the US is an important market. But at the end of the day, maybe this is the sort of the decentralization of power again, right? Of moving away from that that central one country that kind of runs the show, and decentralizing that power. I don't know. We don't know how it will play out, but we live in the most crazy and interesting times. And, you know, thanks Pluto and Capricorn. I mean, I just always come back with Pluto and Capricorn. It's like the closing off of those energies that started in 2008. And I mean, it's not a, people will laugh at me when I say this, but in my opinion, like the fiat system actually died in 2008. And it's just on life support. QE has kept it on life support since then. And as we know, a human being can stay on life support and be completely brain dead and not functioning for a really, really long time. And so really at this point in time, it's all about liquidity. It's like, are the Fed tightening? Are the Fed easing? And, and that's what's moving the markets and dictating our system. But how long does that last? We don't know. Maybe, I think sometimes, because we do this podcast every, moon cycle, basically, twice a moon cycle. But sometimes we talk in decades, so it's like, it's difficult to sort of, to see how those things play out.
Definitely. And maybe we can look at now, I guess, a bit more what's going to happen coming soon from this next new moon to the full moon. So it's going to be from new moon in Gemini on the 18th of June to what will be our next podcast on the 3rd of July, which is a full moon in Capricorn. So as we know, typically for Bitcoin, going from a new moon towards a full moon means pullback. It means we are going to head down from local tops, which are created around the new moon, and we start heading down towards a full moon. Looking at the astrology within there, from what I personally have seen so far, and again, here we're speaking specifically about Bitcoin, I do feel like there is this distance starting to be created. And that's just the nature of cycles. This happens where, Bitcoin kind of distances itself from other altcoins until then the altcoins catch up. And Bitcoin, once again, just still looks really good. I think it's got some consistent, really good aspects, and as we spoke before about really Uranus is such a key planet, and it's shining with Uranus, sextile Uranus for Bitcoin, and Uranus trine Saturn for Bitcoin. So that's where I always said, like, it's the superhero vibes, like Bitcoin's coming to save the day. But the one red flag that I do see for Uranus is Mars square Uranus. So that's where I'm like, okay, squared is not a great, it's a challenging aspect. So again, if I didn't say, this happens around the 26th of June. So I'm like, okay, maybe there's going to be some challenges. Normal, we're going from new moon to full moon, maybe, a bit of a pullback in price. But again, I don't really see Bitcoin going under 25K. For now. Again, no financial advice, guys, and this is purely an astrological analysis. But I still feel like Bitcoin's just really going to hold up. Now, we really need to see, once we get closer to the new moon, where we can then potentially see price more specifically go from there. But at this point, that is what I'm seeing. So that's the only red flag.
Are you telling me that I'm not going to get my 10K Bitcoin this year? I'm really upset about it.
Oh, I mean, we're only talking about June.
Okay.
We'll see next eclipse season in October, because even though things are looking positive right now for Bitcoin, I'm not seeing all-time highs.
Yeah, I mean, we've said that all along from our first episode, actually, is 2023 is just going to be a very choppy year. And I don't think we had planned some of the things that we'd seen, in this year, but we said, I think in our first episode, that 2023 is really the year of accumulation, and it's like, take that opportunity every time there's a dip to accumulate. And we don't know where it's going to go. Sadly, the astrology doesn't give us a price. Be really nice if it did, but
we'll work on it.
Yeah, but just be prepared to accumulate when the opportunities present themselves. And I also don't see all-time highs coming this year. I see a lot of different things, but we have some interesting aspects, though, or some interesting sort of transits. We've got Mars in Leo in the first house, which is of the shareholders. So Mars in Leo kind of brings forth these qualities. Leo's my ascending. It's Corinne's sun. It's, it's where we get our confidence. Like, basically, it's where we draw our confidence. And it brings forth these qualities of confidence, ambition, desire for recognition. And so it can kind of lead to increased drive. Like, Leo is very driven. And I sort of see, and it's like in the first house, in the terms of the shareholders, I kind of see that vibe from Brian Armstrong. I kind of see that vibe from the Bitcoin community. Is like, okay, bring it. We're, Mars is the war planet, right? And so I think that there is that energy at the moment of people kind of going, okay, we, bring what you've got. And there's that confidence, that ambition. And we also have Venus in Leo, which just makes me laugh about what you were saying, Corinne, last episode. You were way ahead of this. It's, when I was describing Taurus energy, it's very much about this like old money vibes, this very luxurious. Well, Leo is in Venus, is like a different energy. It's like shopping energy. It's like excessive luxury. And it's like Venus in Leo feels like, I'm going to have my hot astrology summer, whether the markets like it or not.
Yes.
It's like, so if you feel like that, it's very consumer driven. It's like, very consumer spending, consumer confidence, and just going out and spending. So, just be aware that energy is there, I think.
Yeah, like Leo is the perfect, like, Leo's love language is gifts. Like, it's the perfect, like, I want to shower my queen and king with gifts. Like, just think of literally like a royal lion that just wants to take care of the pride and does it with like, hey, let me go out and hunt for you and bring you back like something. And obviously we're not lions, so we do that by going to the shopping center and bringing you back gifts.
Yeah.
So totally, it's the perfect energy. And that's why I'm like, yeah, like Bitcoin's going up. Everybody's like, let me just get in on Bitcoin.
It's much more outward. Like, the contrast between the Taurus, both love luxury, both love expensive things, both love spending. But Taurus is much more inward. It's much more like in the home, whereas Leo is much more like outward. And yeah, like you say, I love that analogy of going out and bringing back, the prize.
Yeah. And also I will actually rewind to Mars in Leo. Friendly reminder that is horrible for real estate. And there has been some really interesting real estate statistics coming out. So for those people into real estate, just go and check all of that out. Mars won't be out of Leo until the 10th of July.
That's so interesting because, commercial real estate in particular is really, again, like I said, there's a couple of things like not to do with the astrology, but just in the real world, I guess you would say that I'm kind of like, this is like not great for the markets. You know, as I said, the treasury releases, commercial real estate is looking horrible. You know, and a lot of banks either hold the mortgages for those commercial real estates, or they, you know, or they're invested in commercial real estate themselves. So it's that those things are a little bit questionable. And, you know, as you said before and said on previous podcasts, it's like, okay, all of these kind of uncomfortable things that you can see on the horizon that are uncomfortable. But my question is like, okay, Bitcoin, how are you going to respond to this? Like how, because previous cycles, Bitcoin was so liquidity driven and was sort of traded as that risk asset. But, you know, it's just interesting to see how these shifts are happening in how Bitcoin's being viewed. And one of the interesting things that I've noted as well is that, like, in a bull run, Bitcoin is very strongly correlated to the NASDAQ. So it's traded as a speculative asset. It's traded as a tech stock. Similar people that are taking, you know, that are buying growth stocks in the NASDAQ are also buying Bitcoin and looking at growth. Whereas when there are times of geopolitical, political, and financial economic uncertainty, Bitcoin is heavily correlated to gold. So it's just fascinating to see how those sort of shifts happen and how Bitcoin is sort of adapting to the environments. And as you said, Corinne, we don't have any way of back testing these because Bitcoin was born in these environments. We've never seen, you know, how it adapts to these environments. So it's really fascinating to watch. Yeah. And it's kind of more tied to the astrology than it's tied to the the traditional markets, which is really interesting.
I love that. We're literally living through history creating times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's really wild.
And thank you, astrology, for giving us the heads up.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. Yeah.
For giving some guidance, for giving some guides. Yeah. Like you said, a heads up. I mean, I don't think when you talked about Binance a couple of episodes ago, I don't really think anyone was thinking about that, you know, whereas you were able to see it in the charts before it happened. So it's so interesting to be able to do that.
Yeah. And, you know, again, like just a tip for people getting into this space to always pay attention to eclipses and think about what happened the previous eclipse and what may potentially happen the next one, because they're just like triggers of one another, you know? So, yeah, October is going to be the next eclipse. Oh boy, have I already looked at my personal astrology in October, but, you know, I'm just praying and surrendering. And yeah, it's going to be really wild times, I think. And a lot of astrologers that I listen to and follow, because, you know, I'm definitely still growing, especially in the astrology in general side of things. It's different when you talk about astrology in general and then financial astrology. But a lot of astrologers that have been doing this for years in their whole lifetimes just talk about that the next eclipse season in October, we are literally going to be looking at a whole new world, guys. That is in just like 3, 4, 5 months time. So it's super interesting. And, you know, I'm just going to circle back to Uranus energy. Like right now with Uranus being in Taurus, and Uranus is staying in Taurus all the way to 2026. It's just really shaking up our Earth. Taurus is the sign of the Earth. Uranus governs earthquakes, innovation, revolution. Society is just going through massive changes. It's going through massive changes through our material world, our Earth. Even there, people start thinking about foods, your environments, your finances. These are the themes until 2026 that are just being absolutely revolutionized.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We should definitely speak more specifically on that on an episode where we may go down a few other types of rabbit holes.
Yeah. I mean, it is. And I think even starting next year, is again, like we've already talked about Pluto moving into Aquarius. Even that is a huge shift. But there is a lot happening next year as well that's very like unearthing too. But I see 2024 as much more of a like breakthrough year, not just in terms of financial astrology, but definitely in terms of financial astrology. But it's much more of a breakthrough year. Whereas 2023 has always been the tough one. But I think even in terms of, I'm not an expert in numerology at all, but Corinne is more aligned to it. But 2023 is numerology wise was always telling us that as well, right? It's the fight. It's the the messy fight.
It is. It's not a fun year. It is not our party year. 2023 is just a lot of kind of like a series of unfortunate events. But 2024 is great. So just look forward to that. That's going to be wealth, abundance. As we know through the 18.6-year cycle, there's going to be a lot of fake abundance, which then pay the consequences of that in 2026, according to astrology. But yeah, even from a numerology perspective, 2023 is just cruise here, guys. Just prepare.
Yeah, and I mean, even in terms of like, people talk about the Fed pivot, they're ready for the Fed to turn the taps back on, but even that is like, I guess, because people are just looking for some relief. But even that is not generally a bullish sign for the market straight away. Traditionally, the market, that's when it's not really bullish sign, it's more the bottom is about to be printed sign. So I think we should prepare our readers for that, because I think there's a lot of articles that are released. It's like the Fed's going to pivot. It's so exciting. The taps are about to be turned back on. Great, liquidity in the market. But actually, it's not usually a great sign initially. It's usually a sign that, especially if it happens and the Fed has not reached their 2% inflation goal, it's not a good sign for the markets. It's a sign that things are breaking and the economy is really bad and needs rescuing. So, it's not a great sign. So let's see what 2023 brings. Maybe it'll give it. Corinne and I have been hanging out for 10K Bitcoin for so long, but we kind of joke about it now. But who knows what the rest of 2023 brings. We've kind of had a bit of a relief in a way, a little bit throughout the summer, but I think, there's more to come. And you guys are coming into an election year. And I personally think that is a time that I'm going to be turning off the news, because I think it's going to be really dirty. It's going to get really dirty, and I just am not interested in kind of engaging my energy in that kind of vibe, so
spin people out for sure. And maybe we'll even see some of that strange AI where it's not really happening, but I was talking about that with someone today. But yeah, we'll spin people out for sure. It'll be a good time to have heart coherence skills and practices to stay centered in reality,
Wow.
Big time for that. And that, like you said, that all comes with Aquarian age, with Pluto eventually going back into Aquarius, Saturn in Pisces. It's about the illusions the illusions that are just constantly being presented to us. And I didn't even mention, and maybe, it's important to point out, as of the 17th of June, the day right before the next new moon in Gemini, Saturn's going into retrograde in Pisces. So that in itself is going to be, just a different kind of shakeup, where it's just a friendly reminder on, hey, responsibilities. Are you looking at those? Are you taking care of those? And it can spark a lot of ambition, productivity as well around this time. But it is a further confirmation of needing to really look during this time at terms, conditions, rules, regulations, discipline, control, authority. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. They're all written through the astrology, and that's staying. Saturn in Pisces retrograde is until the 4th of November 2023.
It's really like a foundational year, I think. It's like getting things in order. Like, I think there's a lot of different things coming up in different areas of the world as well, like a lot of things being uncovered and pulled up. Like, I don't know if you guys follow things to do with the church, but there's all sorts of scandals. I mean, I feel like we have one every week, a lot of things being uncovered. And like I said to a friend of mine the other day, it feels like God is cleaning house. And I think the broader scheme of things, that's what 2023 has been. It's like God is cleaning house in a lot of these different areas, a lot of, areas of power, in terms of religion, the church, financial areas, politics. And I think that's going to all play out on the main stage of your election.
Oh my God.
I think we should put together a list of things that we've actually called on this podcast and just review them at the end of the year and go, okay, tick that off.
That would be a great episode. The checklist, the end of 2023 checklist that then we can rip up and throw out and burn, because we're going to be done with this year and ready for abundance in 2024.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you say, like, I think that's also the reminder is that it's, everything right now, since 2008, everything has been driven by quantitative easing and has been driven by liquidity, which is fake abundance. It's like the machine allowing the financial system to continue breathing. It's driven by liquidity, not productivity anymore, which is, makes me really uncomfortable, but hey, it is what it is. It's what we've got to work with. We're not in control of these things, but it is definitely something to keep in the back of your mind. That's what's driving the market, and that's what's driving the system. And as Corinne mentioned, the 18.6-year cycle again, and property. The 2026 is the end of the American 18-year property cycle, right? So that's also important to keep in mind, because that has followed for hundreds of years and has been aligned with that 18.6-year property cycle. 18-year cycle and 18.6-year astrological cycle for hundreds of years. So, interesting times ahead, hey?
Yeah.
Very.
We've just got to survive 2023. Let's just survive it, ladies.
Yes, we're just floating through this year. I'm just like, I'll just flow. Like my Saturn's probably screaming at me, but I'm like, responsibilities. We'll take care of that in 2024. We just got to get through this year.
And it's just being able to pivot as well, because I personally feel like I'm thriving, but it's only because I'm a trader. And so,
right.
Do you know what I mean? If I was just someone that was sitting in crypto waiting for the next bull run, I would be miserable. But trading has been really, thriving in that respect. So Yeah. It's just having that ability to pivot and be flexible and give what is, take what is given to you and work with what is given to you instead of what you want it to be.
Yeah.
Freedom.
Oh yeah.
Perfect. Well, we might wrap things up there.
Yeah.
And happy new moon to all of our listeners.
All righty, ladies. Well, thank you so much, and happy new moon, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.
Peace and love and Bitcoin.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Bitcoin Zodiac podcast. We hope that our discussions about cryptocurrency, trading, the phases of the moon, and spirituality have inspired you to explore these topics further. As always, DYOR, do your own research. Stay tuned for our next episode where we will continue to dive deeper and build off of these perception-expanding topics. Remember, whatever your beliefs may be, we all have something to learn from each other. So stay curious, stay open-minded, and keep exploring the world of Bitcoin and astrology. Until next time, these are your hosts signing off. May the stars align in your favor and your Bitcoin investments prosper. Peace and love and Bitcoin. Namaste.